One sentence. No name mentioned. No promise made. Yet millions of hearts stopped at the exact same second. When Xiao Zhan spoke about a Chongqing accent, the internet didn't hear acting talk. It heard history calling back. And once again, the name Wang Yibo echoed without being spoken. December 17th, 2025 was supposed to pass quietly. A routine promotional interview. A calm studio. A familiar smile. Xiao Zhan sat across from the camera during his Fox Factory interview. Composed as always, answering questions with the gentleness fans have come to recognize as his signature. The topic was simple: dialects, accents, acting preparation. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that hinted at emotional chaos. Fans were relaxed, amused even, as he laughed off old jokes about having a dialect KPI, explaining that learning accents is never a goal, only a requirement when a script demands it. This was safe territory, neutral ground, until it wasn't, because then Xiao Zhan paused, just slightly, and said something that changed the atmosphere completely. I'm originally from Chongqing, and to this day, I'm still waiting for a script that uses my native dialect. I really want to play a role with a Chongqing accent. The sentence ended, but the silence it left behind was deafening. No names were spoken, no references were made. Yet within seconds, fans across the world felt the same sharp pull in their chest. Because Chongqing is not just a city, it is a shared origin, a deeply embedded memory. And for those who have carried the story of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo for years, that one line landed like a message hidden in plain sight. Timelines froze, then exploded. Screenshots flooded Weibo. Clips were replayed, slowed down, dissected frame by frame. Fans didn't ask what did he say, they asked why now. Why bring up waiting? Why emphasize the native dialect? Why let that sentence exist at all, knowing exactly who would hear it the loudest? This wasn't drama, this was resonance, and the emotional tremor had only just begun. To understand why this moment cut so deep, you have to go back, not to scandals or rumors, but to connection. In 2019, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stood side by side at the center of a cultural phenomenon that reshaped fandom itself. The Untamed wasn't just a drama. It was a global emotional event. Their chemistry rewrote expectations, broke viewership records, and created a bond that extended far beyond the screen. For many fans, Zhan wasn't a ship. It was a feeling, a shared language of silence, loyalty, and mutual gravity. And then everything stopped. No public interactions, no collaborations, barely even names spoken in the same breath. Years passed, filled with speculation, tension, and invisible lines no one could cross. Fans learned to read absence as carefully as presence. Every interview, every phrase, every pause became meaningful. Not because fans wanted drama, but because silence was all they were given. So when Xiao Zhan said he was still waiting, fans didn't hear coincidence. They heard time. They heard patience. They heard something unfinished. Hashtags surged within minutes. Hashtag Xiao Zhan Chongqing dialect. Hashtag Quietest reunion. Millions of mentions. But what shocked observers wasn't the numbers. It was the unity. Fans who had spent years divided suddenly cried together on the same timelines. Old edits resurfaced like treasured photographs. Scenes from the Untamed returned, not as fantasy, but as memory. New fan art appeared overnight, themed around returning home, shared roots, and quiet understanding. One viral comment said, "He didn't say his name, but we all heard it." Another wrote, "This feels like a whisper across time." It wasn't confirmation. It wasn't a promise. But emotionally, it was enough. Because sometimes one honest sentence can reopen everything people worked so hard to close. The moment grew heavier when Xiao Zhan continued speaking, not about dialects, but about himself. He reflected on how different he is from his current character, Xian. His voice softened, his words slowed. "I'm not that talkative in real life," he admitted. "I prefer precise output. I say what matters." That line changed the entire conversation. Because fans know this about Xiao Zhan. He is careful, intentional, measured. He doesn't speak without reason. He doesn't leave loose and casually. So fans began to ask, quietly at first, if he speaks only when it matters, then why did this matter enough to say? Why bring up Chongqing now? Why emphasize waiting? Why let that sentence exist, knowing exactly how deeply it would land? Speculation grew, but so did restraint. Many fans reminded each other to breathe. There were no official statements, no agency announcements, no confirmed projects. This was not news, and it was not being treated as news. It was being treated as emotion. An emotion, when shared by millions, becomes powerful. Fandom servers reportedly struggled under the traffic, not because of breaking announcements, but because people were processing something deeply personal together. Tears were shed not over what was promised, but over what was remembered. Because the power of this moment wasn't factual. It was emotional truth. Xiao Zhan didn't point backward. He didn't point forward. He simply stood still, and that stillness spoke volumes. What makes this moment so fragile is precisely what makes it so real. There is no reunion confirmed, no drama announced, no public acknowledgement from Wang Yibo. And yet something shifted. This story now exists in the quiet space between hope and reality, where fandoms have lived for years. Xiao Zhan spoke about an accent, but fans heard history. They heard unfinished chapters. They heard two paths that once ran side by side, diverged, and perhaps never truly stopped influencing each other. Is this the beginning of something new? Or simply the echo of something that never fully faded? No one knows. And perhaps that's the point. In an industry built on distance, control, and silence, moments like this feel rare because they are unscripted in their impact. They don't announce themselves. They don't confirm anything. They simply happen and leave people changed. Tonight, millions of fans around the world are still awake, scrolling, replaying, sitting quietly with feelings they didn't expect to resurface. Not because they were promised anything, but because they were reminded of something deeply human. That some connections, once formed, do not disappear. They simply wait. So maybe this isn't a story about reunion. Maybe it's a story about memory. About how one sentence can reopen a door people thought was sealed forever. About how silence doesn't erase meaning, it preserves it. About how hope doesn't need confirmation to exist. Xiao Zhan didn't say Wang Yibo's name, but he didn't need to. Because tonight, fans didn't hear speculation. They heard sincerity. And sometimes, that is more powerful than any announcement. If this moment stirred something in you, sit with it. Let it exist without demanding answers. Because in a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, remembering together can be an act of quiet resistance. Not every story needs an ending. Some simply remind us why we care in the first place.